just to be ready, maybe, maybe, do you have some tissues? Thank you. Maybe this. If I start to talk about Rinpoche, we'll need this one. So, good evening, and thank you, Guat Chang, and all the good folks at ABC for the invite. So many of you I've known for a long time, and many times I've been on this side in the audience. We were all so fortunate to receive so many teachings from our precious Guru Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And so I think since maybe 2007, when this place was still being renovated, I had the extreme good fortune to come many times to Singapore and drink the nectar. Hi, Serene. Drink the nectar of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings. And through that, came to know many of you as my Dharma brothers and sisters. And so now is my first time on this side. And so I feel very fortunate, first to have come to this place so many times for the teachings of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and now also fortunate that I haven't been invited to be on this side and share a little bit about my small experiences and some thoughts that I've had. So, let's see. As you know, in the tradition, then it's very important at the beginning of the teaching to set a very positive motivation. So, let's do that. Let's think that the purpose of our life is to benefit others. And in particular, in order that we can benefit others in the best way, we have to develop our qualities. The more qualities we have ourselves, then the more we can offer to others. And so the Dharma teachings really is just these methods by which we can develop our inner qualities. So that's why we try to study and put into practice the Dharma teachings. And therefore, for tonight's sharing, we also bring that motivation that in order to fully develop our qualities and become enlightened beings, then we need to know about the various teachings and we need to know how to put them into practice. And therefore, we've come to this talk tonight. Sorry. Okay. So, as I mentioned, we're all extremely fortunate, and especially I can say this. this Amitabha Buddhist Center. You guys really are the crown jewel in the FPMT. I'm not doing this to flatter you, but it's true. You think about how many times Rinpoche has come here of the 135 centers of FPMT. Probably Rinpoche has spent the most time here. What do you think? I think so. And so, how did that happen? I think in large part, Hap Chang, who's been your director for so many years, is an old Dharma friend of mine too, being very exact and meticulous in following Rinpoche's advice that he had for the center. So, because of that, it's my opinion, when you follow the Guru in this way, then you're able to get more teachings and more advice and more instructions from the Guru, and that just builds on itself. But like I think many of you, it came as a real earth-shattering shock last year when Rinpoche showed the aspect of passing away into the Dharmata. And I remember I was in San Francisco, California, and I opened up my email, and then the subject line of the email, so I'm on the CPMT mailing list, because I'm a FPMT registered teacher, right? And then the subject line that came out, Rinpoche is in meditation at Kopan. Well, okay, Rinpoche is meditating at Kopan. Okay. Oh, sorry, urgent. So my thought was like, I mean, when he's at Kopan or wherever he is, he's meditating. So what's so urgent about this? You know? But since it said urgent, open it up. Don't just leave it, right? Okay. So then I read. And then, it becomes clear this isn't just some regular meditation, but he's entered the final meditation, the clear light that comes at the time of death. So then, I fell on the ground. Couldn't believe, right? So, many of you might know, I hope some of you at least know, from the time of the Buddha's own life story. Many of the arhats, Shariputra, Moggallana, so forth, they had an inkling. They knew that the Buddha was about to pass away, and they thought it would be totally unbearable. So they entered into parinirvana first. You understand? Maybe not. You have to understand. The arhats means totally abandon all the afflictions. You know, anger, attachment, craving, jealousy. They've attained nirvana, right? The state beyond all suffering, right? That's what they say, right? Yet, they still thought it would be unbearable for them to see the Buddha pass away, that they left their bodies first. You understand? So then, I'm not an arhat. Sorry. I still have many afflictions that arise every day. Yes. So then to see, to hear about, to think about my own precious guru, who was so kind and took care of me. Like a mother, like a father. Then, a lot of unbearable suffering, right? So, if you're anything like me, then of course sometimes this feeling of, what do I do now? This feeling of being lost. Has this come up? Yeah. It did for me too. And so a lot of what I've had to do, what I have done, and what I'll continue to do is now thinking about how we continue with our practice, how we continue following the path, following our guru, trying to fulfill his wishes. So, in the week after Rinpoche passed away, I had the good fortune to go to Land of Medicine Buddha in SoCal, California, Northern California. You've probably heard of it. And Karuna Ketan, who's now the I guess chairman of the board of FPMT, he's taken over. He was trained as a psychotherapist. And I was able to talk to him about the grief, about all these mixed emotions that I was feeling. And he said something, well, I'll say it first. So he had the good fortune to be a direct disciple of Lama Yeshe. And he was very close to Lama Yeshe, who, as you know, was the other co-founder of FPMT. Lama Yeshe passed away in 1984. And Karuna said that even now, 40 years later, he hasn't gotten over. He's never gotten over Lama Yeshe's passing. So for me, actually, that brought some peace, right? Right? It's okay. It's okay to feel grief. It's okay to feel lost, right? We all lost someone who is so pivotal, so influential in our lives. We lost someone who guided us with such care, kindness, wisdom, compassion. Hey, we lost our guide. So it's okay to feel lost, right? Oh. But then, when I continued to go on with life, right? Yeah. Continued to talk with my Dharma brothers and sisters. And I got another very good piece of little nugget of wisdom from my good, probably my best Dharma friend, Geshe Tenzin Lexok. Some of you know him. Another American monk, studied at Sera, just became Geshe. I was talking to him, and he said, you know what? This feeling of being lost and not having guidance, he said, actually, we've received so much guidance from Rinpoche over the years. We've received so many teachings, you know? And so actually, we know how Rinpoche was. We know what he emphasized in his teachings. We know sort of how he viewed the world with bodhicitta, with compassion for all sentient beings. We know what actions we should engage in and what we should abandon. There's no real mystery with that. So, on the one hand, His Holiness the Dalai Lama often jokes like this, where, you know, in the seven limb prayer, right? In the seven limb prayer, which is found in almost every sadhana, we have the limb of requesting that the Buddhas turn the wheel of Dharma, right? Actually, next Tuesday is the Chugor Duchen. It's the festival day to commemorate the Buddha's first teaching, right? So His Holiness jokes and says, you know, we have the 108 volumes of the sutras. We have the 215 volumes of the Shastras, the Indian commentaries. Right? And, well, first of all, most Tibetan temples, most shrine rooms, they'll have those texts somewhere up or wrapped in nice cloth. So His Holiness often jokes, well, these are texts. They're not just to be put up on the shelf and we prostrate to it or we offer a kata to it. They're meant to be taken down and read. Not only read, then meditated on and practiced. So now it's a bit strange, he says, where we keep asking, oh, turn the wheel of Dharma, turn the wheel of Dharma. In other words, give us more teachings, give us more teachings. But the teachings we have received is collecting dust up on a shelf. Is it? So then, for me, it's been really beneficial for my mind. And therefore, I'm going to share with you. Maybe you can also do and also find benefit, right? But I've gone back and I started to reread many of the teachings that Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave. So Venerable Joan, who all of you know, right? When Rinpoche would teach here, would do the live transcriptions, right? So beneficial, especially I know some of you or some that come to the teachings, English isn't the first language. Oh, by the way, if you can't understand what I'm saying too, you can raise your hand in the middle and say, oh, I didn't understand. I know I speak with a little bit, well, American accent. So it's okay. I can repeat things. It's okay, right? All right. But in any case, for the people who couldn't understand, and Venerable Joan spent so much effort doing those live transcriptions. One time in Bangalore, Venerable Joan couldn't come. So I tried to do that job. Venerable Joan, with so many years of experience, now she does the autocorrect in Microsoft Word. So like PHR instead of Precious Human Rebirth, or you know, all these little tricks of the trade. I don't have any of those. I'm like, period. It's very difficult. Anyway, with all that hard work, it wasn't just then for the people attending the teachings could see, but then those transcripts are available. And we can read. It's so amazing, actually. So that body of work, then, from all of these teachings that Rinpoche has given, is like our Kangyur and Tengyur. Sorry, Kangyur is the sutras, Tengyur is the commentaries. You know? So, those aren't just something then to be put in nice cloth and on some altar, but it's for us then to go back, to read and try to put into practice. And I think it's kind of like this, right? So, for example, liberation in the palm of your hand. Yes? You guys read? Yes. That's the thick book. Lamrim Chenmo. You guys read? Yes. That's 3 thick books. But anyway, these seminal texts, the quintessential texts of this tradition, we should read again and again. By the way, I'm reminded of a story from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Okay. There's 2 Tibetan geshes who, in Dharamsala, above in the mountains, they did the long retreat. And we were saying, what constitutes a long retreat? So it's a traditional 3 years, 3 months, 3-day retreat on Yamantaka. Ooh, right? Very exotic, highest yoga tantra, secret, the highest, right? And so, after they had come out of retreat, then they got an audience with His Holiness. And probably, okay, in other traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, after you do a 3-year retreat, it's seen as a kind of big deal, and they give you the title Lama. If you retreat, okay, now you're a Lama, right? It's nice. You get a title. Sounds nice. So I don't know these geshes, but they go to see His Holiness, telling, oh yeah, we just did our 3-year retreat on Yamantaka. And His Holiness asks them, how many times have you read Lamrim Chenmo? 3 times. His Holiness laughs. I think this was in the 80s, by the way, 80s or 90s, because I heard this story a long time ago, and it was already an old story. His Holiness laughs and said he has read it like 43 times, like something 50 times. It's like 1980. So can you imagine how many times by now? In any case, we need to read, meditate, and practice this again and again. And what I found in my experience, you see, every time you read that, even the same book, oh, I've read it 3 times, nothing more to learn. Well, actually, every time you read it, there's going to be different things that pop out at you. Different passages, different stories, different anecdotes that will then kind of hit the mind in a different way. And so, similar to that, now we have this body of work from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and in my humble opinion, the kind of how do we say, magnum opus. Yeah, you guys know? Like the crowning achievement of Rinpoche's teachings, here's my hypothesis, the series of teachings that Rinpoche gave at Kopan during the COVID lockdowns. There's probably 180 or so teachings that he gave. All of them have transcripts. Each one, maybe 20, 30 pages. Not bad. My humble advice to all of you, download all of those. You read them again and again. You, of course, read Lamrim Chenmo, read Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand, yes. And then, on the side, today. So by the way, my beloved sister is here. It's her first time in Singapore. Today we went out for local food. We had rojak, vegetarian one, okay? It was kind of like a side dish, right? Right? So you have your Lamrim Chenmo, you have your Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand, that's the main course. Then you put Rinpoche's teachings, the rojak, on the side. Just, spice things up a little bit, give it different flavors. Yes. And every time you read, different things will come out. And especially because we're all students of Rinpoche, right? We then can truly see what it says in Lamrim. The greatness of the Lamrim teaching? All teachings appear as instructions for practice, right? Right in the beginning of Lamrim, what are the four greatnesses? We're able to see that all the Buddha's teachings are free from contradiction. Able to see all the teachings are instructions for practice. Able to see all teachings, easily finding the conqueror's intent. And then it prevents us from falling into the grave misdeed, right? So that one, we can really see, oh, Rinpoche is giving this teaching to me. Even though you weren't there at the Koban, in Rinpoche's room, but you can see like that. So, as you might have heard, I studied at Seta J, right? 17 years. And, well, I'll say this. So, when we were talking about the topic of the teaching, as it was said, right? They wanted to attract a younger crowd. They wanted to attract, kind of new people to Dharma. And so, can I say, the original topic they wanted to put on the flyer was not reflections, but confessions of an American monk. So it sounds a bit like, ooh, right? Kind of cool or like intriguing, might attract more people. But I said, well, maybe people then will come expecting some kind of scandal, like I'll confess. I don't know. So I said, let's say reflections instead. But there's also some confessions I can make. Now that you've come for the reflections, I can give you the confessions. So, just to share, right? We're all old friends, you know? Then it was in October of 22, Rinpoche, and I mean, in hindsight, we had our last sort of meeting. And at that time, I was already feeling like, I was 16 years into the program, and the enthusiasm was waning. Maybe I was running out of merit. I shared this with Rinpoche, and a little bit expecting the normal kind of pep talk, right? You know, when I talk to normal friends, all right, come on, 3 more years, you can do it. Think of all the benefit you'll be a geshe, you know? Rah, rah, rah. Rinpoche says, go on retreat. Rinpoche, I have just 3 years left. Yeah, you don't need the title. Rinpoche, you don't need the name. Rinpoche, now's the time to try to get realization. Okay. And then, Rinpoche, so when should I start retreat? Then he told me to finish that year of the study, finish 1 more year, and then go on retreat. So basically, you know, I don't know if you guys have this. We call it the lame duck president. Okay, you know, in the U.S., our elections are in November, right? But the new person only comes into office January 1st. So in the meantime, that little like last month and a half, called a lame duck president. Maybe you guys have this in school, right? You're already accepted to university, right? Then the last kind of few weeks of school, the grades don't matter anymore. So we used to call, sorry to say, I know Singaporeans, so diligent students, so sorry. But we would call it the senior slump, right? The last year of our school, senior, and then we just slump off and like relax. Because it's like, what's the motivation? I'm already into uni. Why am I studying for these exams? So I went through my own slump. Knowing I wasn't going to become a geshe, I was like, oh my gosh. So, then this year, I leave, and now I've started retreat in Nepal. And, well, just so that, it's not all bad. In the last year, I had the responsibility of being the director of I Am My House, and we did a renovation project. I had different teaching projects and translation. So even though a little bit less engaged in the studies, still try to, make good use of the time with service. Now, I started retreat. I did 1 month. And in that month, I followed my own advice. And I read the whole series of the COVID teachings. And I'd read them before, the previous year, and for sure, different things stood out to me this time. And so I thought, maybe I can share a few of those with you. If it resonates with you, good. If not, okay. You can also just read those transcripts yourself and see what resonates for you. And then I want to leave a good amount of time for your questions. Okay? All right. So, one thing that Rinpoche mentioned several times is, and I don't know who this is, but he mentions that there is a monk decades ago. And this monk was in Nalanda in France. And this monk had been studying the very deep philosophical texts, including the famous text Trangye Lekshi Ningpo, The Essence of Eloquence by Lama Tsongkhapa. And then at one point, the monk disrobes and he goes to Rinpoche and says, you know what, I've studied all these texts and the Dharma never brought me happiness. Have you heard Rinpoche tell the story? Oh. That shows you haven't been reading the transcripts. So it's very true. I know you guys, right? Crown jewel of FPMT. I know Ken Rinpoche has been teaching Gompa Rabsel, the illumination of thought. How did they translate it? The quintessential text by Lama Tsongkhapa on Chandrakirti's supplement to the middle way, right? Amazing. But as amazing as that is, there's still a risk. I know this from the Geshe study program, that we acquire all this intellectual knowledge and, well, if you've studied some, then you know in the Tibetan tradition, well, Gelugpa especially, very fond of lists, right? 16 of this, 51 of that, 173 of this, you know? The 10 powers, the Four Noble Truths, the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. And then, Rinpoche uses this, it's like we're a computer, right? And we can recall all these facts about the Dharma, but the mind is as it was before. So, how do we then make sure that we're actually affecting our mind, subduing our mind, using the Dharma teachings to enact some change? So for me, many of you, I suspect, have the same thing, right? We've taken all these commitments, right? We do all our daily prayers, but it's like paying taxes, right? Get out of the way. Quicker the better, so we can get back to our samsaric life, the real happiness. Okay, I promise my guru I'll do these practices every day, but I'll do it, but I'm not going to like it. I'm going to do it as quickly as possible so I can get back to my K-drama series. So my thought, and what I was able to do a little bit in retreat, is, even to take one of those stanzas in the pages and pages that we do every day, and just let it simmer. Let it marinate. Let it penetrate the mind. And then, it's very important, it says in the text, it says in the meditation manuals, but I kind of lost sight of this. What to do in the post-meditative session, after your meditation session. Those same topics that you are meditating on, you should recall throughout the day. So especially for you, you're going to work, you have your busy commitments, social commitments, family commitments, work commitments. If we just, okay, I do my practice in the morning, done, and then go off, and we leave our Dharma in front of our altar. Not sure that's what our gurus intended. You see? So, we say this. Those of you who do the transforming a suffering life into happiness, you know this text? If you don't know this text, you should know this text, because Lama Zopa Rinpoche put together these verses for us. He emphasized that all of his students should be doing these ones when we wake up in the morning, to transform our life, the suffering life, into happiness. Means transforming our motivation for the day, right? And in that, there's the glancing prayer on Lamrim. And then there's all these stanzas from Shantideva. So, what's the first one? For the sake of accomplishing the purposes of all sentient beings, without any sense of loss or concern, I give away my body, and likewise my enjoyments, such as food and clothing, and even all my virtues accumulate over the 3 times. If you guys do 6th session Guru Yoga, maybe, or you do in the context of Lama Chupa, retaking the Bodhisattva vows, right? What are we saying there? All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas abiding in the 10 directions, please pay attention to me. Just as all the Sugatas of the past generated the mind of bodhicitta and then trained themselves in the stages of the Bodhisattva practice, so I too will generate bodhicitta and train myself in the stages of the Bodhisattva's trainings. Okay. So most of the time, right? Okay. Or the other one, in Lama Chupa, right? I go for each of the 3 jewels. I confess all my activities individually. I rejoice in the virtues. I hold on my mind the mind of enlightenment. And then, what's the English? But anyway, later, having generated the mind of bodhicitta, I will treat all sentient beings as my guests, and with the pleasing, and treat them with the pleasing, enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. We say this? So most of the time, like what I know the Tibetan, right? It's even fast. You know, like this, we can say, nothing is happening. Okay? Nothing is moving in the heart. So it occurred to me, actually, it's a very skillful method if we allow it to be. You know, it's kind of like this. I read somewhere, you know, the most effective way to quit smoking, okay, don't smoke, anyone. But if you do smoke, what's the most effective way to quit? I read this. You tell all your friends, I've quit smoking. Okay, now, what then happens? You go out, then you go out of the bar or whatever, and you start to smoke. Then your friend will be, hey, you told me you're quitting smoking. What's going on? And then that positive peer pressure, you don't want to be scolded by your friend, will help you, okay, I'm not going to do it. So the thought is, and this is in all the kind of Silicon Valley productivity tips and blogs, you make a public commitment. You make a public commitment to something you want to do. And then that positive peer pressure will help you along the way. So now what are we doing? We say, all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, please listen to me. Do we realize that? The Buddhas who are omniscient, right? Wherever they are, whatever pure land, whatever they might be doing, we're saying, please listen to me. And then we're saying, just as all the Buddhas of the past generated the mind of enlightenment and then trained in the Bodhisattva practice, so I too for the sake of sentient beings will generate bodhicitta, and then train in the practice. That's what we say 6 times a day, some of you. Yes? So then what? Sorry, I don't want to say you. It's me. We got to look at ourselves. Even if I have to spend an ocean of eons in the fiery hells of Avicii for the sake of one sentient being, Lama Zopa. Even if I have to spend an ocean of eons in the fire hells of Avicii, may I not, without discouragement, may, train for enlightenment and thus complete the perfection of joyous perseverance. Right? So, we think of this. We think of Milarepa, who, in following the Guru, made the tower, took down the tower, 9-story tower, no cranes, no equipment. We hear of Lama Tsongkhapa's life story, 3.5 million prostrations, 1.8 mandala offerings. Oh, and by the way, this is what I thought of. You remember before he went off to Uoka, where he did the retreat, he was in the middle of teaching, it says in his biography, to more than 10,000 students. He's in the middle of the teaching. 10,000 students? And in the middle of the teaching, Manjushri comes to him and says, okay, time to go to retreat. He's about halfway done with the teaching. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, whoa. I got all these students here. We're in the middle of the teaching. Can't I, just finish and then go? Wouldn't that be more beneficial? Manjushri. Can you imagine? You have a vision of Manjushri and then you're kind of arguing and negotiating? So Manjushri says, I'm paraphrasing, of course. I'm Manjushri. I know what's beneficial and not. You go to retreat. So sometimes, I reflected on that. Actually, when I came back from Bodh Gaya, and I was about to leave Sera, then Tromto Rinpoche gave a teaching at Sera, and he told that story. And it was actually very beneficial for my mind, because I was like, oh, I'm also kind of picking up and leaving to do retreat in the middle of something. But that's what my guru advised me. So we got to do. So in any case, whatever instructions you might have received personally from Rinpoche, whatever instructions he gave to his students, then, we need to do that. And very joyfully. we make a lot of prayers, I hope, for Rinpoche's swift return. But it's not just that we want Rinpoche to come back or come back soon so that, I don't know, you hear stories, the reincarnation of a Lama comes back and then they do something that shows that they remember you, right? And then the person feels so nice. Okay, that's not why. But we need Rinpoche to come back so we can continue to get guidance. So we can continue to be led to the state of enlightenment. But then from our side, we have to remember, right, how His Holiness chides us and says, well, if we haven't followed the last set of advice we got, then what's the point of the Guru coming again? So, before I open it up to questions, I just wanted to say that, after Rinpoche showed the aspect of passing away into into the Dharmata, His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave the advice that we all recite the names of Manjushri. Yes? And then, more recently, we got the advice to do that and all these protective prayers. So I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't think that's a great sign, right? We call on the protective prayers, the wrathful emanations of the Buddhas, only when it's like a very serious and more dangerous kind of situation. So I think that advice is for us to kind of redouble our efforts and practice more. Follow, and not just the formal practice, but really to embody the teachings in our daily life. I have to admit, one of the last translation projects Rinpoche gave me was to translate a text actually on the benefits of the names of Manjushri. And I am ashamed to say he gave me that project in 2020, 3.5 years ago. And of course, I think I'm busy, right? And I met Rinpoche later, and I said, "Sorry, Rinpoche, you gave me that. I know you gave me that work to do. I haven't done it yet." And he was very compassionate. "It's okay. Only when you have time. Only when you have time. No rush." And so I think, I'm too busy with this. I'm too busy with that. I'll do later. I'll do later. I'll do later. But, if I'm honest, I went back to visit my family in Hawaii, right? I went to the beach, I went snorkeling, I went surfing. I had time for all of that, right? And I say, "Oh, Rinpoche, sorry, I don't have time to do the work." So when you read the transcripts, he talks about the story of Geshe Chayuwa, who then, in the middle of writing a letter, the Tibetans, they have the flat line on top and then whatever underneath. So when Chayuwa was writing a letter and he write the top line, then he hears his guru calling for him, he drop the pen immediately and go serve his guru. If he was offering the mandala, 37 heaps, in the middle of it, he hears his guru, he drops the mandala. Rinpoche tells that story a few times. So then, when I was reading that, it just came like, oh my gosh. This is how we should be practicing. This is the most important thing, the kind of thing, drop everything. So, that's what I think. Venerable Sarah Thresher, many of you know. Yeah? So I told her about my delay in getting the work done. And she was of the opinion that, oh yes, you should, try to finish that soon, because once that text comes out on the benefits of the names of Manjushri, then people will feel more motivation to recite it for Rinpoche's swift return. But you know what I told her? I said, wait a minute. His Holiness the Dalai Lama already told us to do it. So what more kind of motivation and convincing do you need? If His Holiness says, recite this for Rinpoche's swift return, and we're not doing it, what is some translation from me going to do to convince you, if you're not already convinced? Hakosonge. That's Tibetan. So, in any case, we're old Dharma friends. And therefore, I feel I can say stuff like this, just like when you tell your friends you're going to quit smoking, they'll see you outside and they'll just gently chide you. Of course, it's kind of like, it takes one to know one. So I also admit I need to also work on this. So I'm also telling you, I'm trying to quit smoking. So you can also tell me and ask me, hey, how's that transition going? Hey, how's your bodhicitta practice going? And that'd be good. We can help each other like that. Okay? So we still have a little bit of time left. I wanted to open it to questions, if you have. So yes, please.
Hello. Hi, Venerable. Firstly, it's our great privilege and honor to have you here to share your wisdom with us. I would like to ask about the time that you had studying in Sarah for 17 years. I know that it's very not easy, and may I ask if you can share if there's any obstacles you face along the way, and how do you, deal with that? How do you motivate yourself to spend so many years in the university? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, y'all heard the question? So, yes, many obstacles arose all the time. The first one was, learning Tibetan. Tibetan is a difficult language. And it was, of course, in some number of months, you can have conversations. But everything that we learn Dharma-wise is in Tibetan language. And so I remember 3 years in, it's 3 years in, I go to debate and I didn't understand anything that my debate partner was saying. I mean, of course, you might know a little bit of the geography of Tibet. There's the Lhasa region, Uzang, the central region. Then there's Amdo and Kham. And then when you're studying Tibetan in Dharamsala, they teach mostly based on the central dialect. But then when you go down to Sera, it's mostly people from Kham. And just as an example, instead of cha, they say sha. And then there's another letter, sha, and like you don't know if they mean what you have learned as cha or sha, or you just get. So actually, yeah, that was one of the big things, and I did think like, oh my gosh, after 3 years, I still am coming to debate and I can't understand a word. Certain classmates, they speak the central dialect, very nice. So I got very discouraged. But actually, what I said earlier, right? Even if I have to spend an ocean of eons in the fire hells of Avicii, right? Sometimes I contemplate it like that. Like, okay, Milarepa had to build a tower. I'm supposed to be willing to spend an ocean of eons in the hells. Now my guru has told me to go study at Sera. And as part of that, I sometimes go to debates and don't know a word that's being said. There's some suffering there, but hey, at least I'm not carrying stones, at least I'm not burning in a cauldron, all these other things I'm supposed to do. So just that thought, I am following my guru's wishes. I'm doing what my guru said for me to do. That brought a lot of resilience. Because, once that happens, it's like any of the suffering that we experience, we should think, this is purifying the oceans of negative karma that would other have me, burn in the hells. I'm collecting, so much merit from just doing this. This is a big one. Now, the other obstacle, the main one, again, in my mind, it's all in the mind, but, starting to feel, and this probably happened year, 8, 9, or 10, it all kind of blends together after a while. But this feeling, as I mentioned to you, I'm studying all these lists. I have all this book knowledge, intellectual knowledge, but I'm still getting angry. I'm still my mind is a mess. What's going on? There's a very strict, I gotta go to the puja, gotta go to the debates. All the regimen is very demanding, and so. At one point, again, Geshe Lexo, he gave me some really good advice, and he said, it's very important that you're able to connect with that element or the elements of practice that you connect with and you find joy in. And so at a certain point, I was like, okay, I made a conscious decision that, okay, I'm not going to gun for like the top marks, but I'm going to take a little bit of that time and do this practice that I like. And then the third thing, which I think is just very, very good in general, is I always try to do retreat every year, even in our Losar break. It was like filling up the tank, right? So in general, Rinpoche gave advice for everyone to do some retreat every year. It gives you an opportunity just to engage in Dharma in a different way. It's kind of like this, and sorry for the kind of sports and fitness analogy, but when one is training, right, it's very good to mix up, what kind of exercises you do. It keeps your body guessing, right? And so to kind of vary your own practice, if one is kind of getting a little bit stale or, you're just flipping through without much feeling, for so long, I was, years and years reciting Foundation of All Good Qualities every day. Okay. Then, hey, out of nowhere, I'm going to do 3 Principles of the Path. Or something else, just to mix it up. I think that's also very good. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Just one caveat, too, with that. I was very, as I mentioned, I was very fortunate to come to Rinpoche's teachings a lot. And that always helped. I went to the retreat he led in south of France. And before that, for so many years, I would come here because the teachings would be, travel close and, But then when I went to France, I took over a month off. And for a long time, I was like, oh, I'm in the studies. I can't miss that much debate. But when I went for the month retreat, I was like, wow, that really helped my mind to spend that much time with the Guru. And so in hindsight, those other, over the years, I wish I had done more of that. There's these teachings at Bendigo, he gave a month, here and there. One other quotation that Rinpoche mentioned a few times in the teaching, he quoted someone who's saying that, something along the lines of, even if everyone becomes your friend, but you lose your relationship with the Guru, then what's the point? Even if you lose relationship with everyone, but you have a good relationship with your Guru, then everything's okay. So, in hindsight, I spent a lot of time stressing about the exams. Man, I was so much anxiety. We had all these exams, etc. It's like, now, I'm reminded. Sorry, just remember this. So liberation in the palm of your hand. In the beginning of it, there's a biography of Pabonka Rinpoche that Reba Rinpoche, some of you might have met him, he wrote. And I still remember that. I mean, I first read it, more than like 20 years ago. But Reba Rinpoche says that you know, something along the lines of he's had success as a scholar, and he is known as a great incarnate Lama himself. But he says that all that really matters is that he was a disciple of Pabonka Rinpoche. You remember this? So, at one point, I think, whatever success we might have as scholars, as practitioners, as teachers, yeah, I hope we all get to the point where we can really feel that all that really matters is that we're disciples of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Sorry. Any other questions? Yes.
Venerable, thank you very much for sharing and inspiring us. So I read on your biography that you started on Theravada and Zen Buddhism, and can you share how you became inspired by Tibetan Buddhism, because it's very different from the two other traditions?
Yes. In short, I went to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachings. That's it. No. I mean, that's actually true. It's interesting, just to share a small story. So, yes, I traveled in Asia. I stayed at a Zen monastery. I stayed at a Thai monastery. I did Vipassana. I really loved it, the practice. Then I saw a friend that I met told me about Root Institute in Bodh Gaya, and there's this monk, Venerable Antonio Sata, who is leading a Vipassana and Basic Mahamudra course retreat there. And I thought, okay, I was at that point exploring different traditions, and since I had an affinity to Vipassana, I'm like, okay, I'll kind of do this bridging the gap between, the Vipassana and Tibetan practice. And I remember I go there, and then they have the dedication, and it's like, due to this merit, may I become a fully enlightened Buddha, such that I can liberate all mother sentient beings from suffering and lead them to that enlightened state, right? You know what happened in my mind? I cross out the M in mother. I'm like, this is a typo. You get me? So I can lead all other sentient beings. I hadn't had the teachings on bodhicitta, where we understand mother sentient beings. You with me? So later, when I go to Dharmasala, it was right after that course, actually. We go to Dharmasala, and I had the good fortune. At that time, His Holiness gave the 2-week Losar teachings. And there we learned about bodhicitta. So it says in the Lamrim teaching, maybe Lamrim Chenmo, that after you receive the bodhicitta teachings, you should think how wonderful. This is really the teaching that I've been looking for. You understand? So, something like that. One of my Dharma sisters was also into Vipassana and asked Lama Zopa Rinpoche about what he thought. And Rinpoche gave the very, very Rinpoche answer. He said, yes, I've never heard them talking about bodhicitta. That's all he said. That's all he had to say. My friend got the message. You see. Does that answer your question? Are there any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Venerable. I wanted to ask, sometimes in public teachings, right, we heard some really very profound topics, and then the teacher would share that actually they are the topics that the Venerables are learning on the 10th year and above. But even for me, I'm nowhere on the 10th year. Maybe I'm not even on the first year. So I'm very curious, what do you learn on your first year? And maybe I should start on that first. Because already in some public teaching, I'm hearing topics that probably you are learning on your 10th or 15th year. So I'm just curious, what do you learn on the first year?
So there's a few things, right? First of all, what we learn in the Geshe Studies program, the first year we're learning the basics of how to debate. So for most of you, what you should be learning your first year is not what the monks are learning their first year. Really. What you should be learning your first year is Lamrim. You know, actually, when Lama Zopa Rinpoche went to Sera and he started to teach, there were monks like 20 years in, geshes, 15, whatever years in. And some of them were crying because they're like, wow, I've never heard this. You understand? So, it's not some, like, Lamrim, we shouldn't just dismiss it as like, oh yeah, they keep teaching Lamrim at the center, but oh, those geshes, they're studying the 5 great Indian texts. I want to do that. All of that, it's an elaboration. But the real thing is the Lamrim. As you see in the beginning, those teachings from Lamrim is actually coming from Abhisamaya Alamkara. It combines the profound view lineage and the extensive deed lineage from Nagarjuna and Asanga. So, that's the real thing. What you need, what we need. Now, if you want to learn debate and logic and all this, okay, we can do that. But that should be seen as, it's actually a big investment, It's a big investment to undertake before you start to see some kind of results from that, It's like studying Tibetan. Of course, it's great if you can, but for you to learn enough Tibetan that it's going to actually benefit your studies, you got to spend probably 5 years serious, right? If you don't have that, you have so many English translations. Do that. I'm sorry if that's not what you want to hear, but that's what I think. Didn't answer your question. So this is what I'm saying, right? Now, you should know this. Remember, the greatness of the Lamrim, right? These lineages that came down of practice instructions came down. Extensive deeds lineage, Buddha, Maitreya, Asanga, all through that. Then the profound view lineage, Manjushu, Buddha, Manjushu, Nagarjuna, down. Then they get passed to Atisha. Takes him to Tibet. And then there's 3 lineages. Extensive scripture lineage, Lamrim lineage, and the perceptual instructions lineage. Then those 3 separate lineages come back into Lama Tsongkhapa, and then it continues down, right? Okay. But each sentient being, why are these different lineages? They have different needs. They have different intelligence levels. They have different amounts of merit, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. So, the Kadampas, I think, were onto something. Those with the karma, those with the merit, those with the time, those with the disposition to study the extensive scriptures, they were taught the extensive scriptures. Those who had different disposition were taught just Lamrim. Then others were just given like simple instructions. So don't think that you then have to do what the Geshes are doing. Now, if you want to say, I'm ready to ordain and join a nunnery, give up my job, then you're shaking your head already. Then we have a different conversation. Then you join the nunnery, then I'll tell you what the nuns in the first year are studying. But, yeah. That's what I think. Okay. The flyer said 7:30 till 9. Now, I know many of you, right? We're all used to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Maybe if the flyer said 7:30, Rinpoche would come at 9 and then go until, all hours of the night. So, maybe one more question, and then I wanted to say, I know you guys have to leave. You guys are so polite and nice, so no one wants to kind of sneak out even though they have to go. So after that, people can leave, and I'll stay here, and we can talk more if you want. If not, we can go have durian. Okay, one more question? Okay. So, thank you very much. Sorry for the tears, but we're friends. It's okay. We say in American slang, keeping it real. in any case, thank you so much for coming. And I hope that you found some benefit. And just in closing, I think it's, there's that bumper sticker. What would Jesus do? Right? Have you seen that? Right? Yes. So when we come to appreciate the teachings, we read, we study, we understand, I think we all know what would Rinpoche do? What would a bodhisattva do? Right? And I always like to say, we shouldn't let the fact that we're not a bodhisattva prevent us from acting like a bodhisattva. You with me? So we know if we're a little bit aware, we know when the self-cherishing mind is arising. We know when the anger, we know when attachment, we know when jealousy. We also know when those positive states of mind are arising. So let's make some effort in that. And in the daily life, remember, it's not just that we put our Dharma down when we arise from the meditation cushion, but everyone we come into contact with, then it's an opportunity to be kind, to act like a bodhisattva, or at least act like a nice person. And as His Holiness says, of course, to the best of our ability, we should benefit others, and at the very least, not harm. Okay? So, with this, let's dedicate our merits for the long lives of the spiritual friends, particularly His Holiness Dalai Lama, whose birthday is tomorrow. Then we also dedicate all our merit for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And it's also important not just that Rinpoche returns swiftly, but also has good health, good genetics, is able to further his training and education without obstacle, and then is to carry on the legacy of benefiting sentient beings in the most effective way. Then from our side, may we always act only in the most pleasing way to our virtuous friends, and only do the actions that are fulfilling their wishes. And then this mind of bodhicitta, may it arise in our hearts and the hearts of all sentient beings without even a second's delay. And may that bodhicitta that has already arisen increase. And due to that, may all the war, natural disasters, environmental degradation, all the disease, all the famine, all the problems, all the causes of suffering of body and mind that exist in this and all the other world systems of the 10 directions be instantly pacified. And may all the sentient beings only enjoy the most conducive conditions for practicing Dharma and quickly attain enlightenment. Okay, so thank you. And yeah, see you sometime, somewhere. Namaste. Tashile. Oh.